And see, I belong to 7 cooperatives, and almost all of them are at least 50 years old. So, if you figure it takes you 5 to 10 years to get one set up, and it lasts for 50 to 100 years, it's probably not too bad.
This is something that Brookings has been looking at. And I shouldn't say Brookings, a select few group of us brought this idea forward. We met in 2000, and I believe it was 18. About 3 people brought it forth and kind of put this out into the world and said, hey, come, let's talk about this. We want to see what kind of interest there is and what people of Brookings are thinking about when doing this. And they figured, 20 people will show up. They had 135 people show up into a room that was probably seated for about 50. So, and right then, sitting in that room, I was not one of the initial people to bring it up, but sitting in that room and seeing the diversity and just the difference in ages and the difference in economic means and males and females and college students and not, just a whole group of different people that all came together and said, hey, this is what we want. Right then I just knew this was going to be a project that needed to be part of. Whether in the background, up front, whatever the case would be. And so from there, they put together a advisory committee, I guess would be the best way to start seeing what we needed to do. What are the steps? None of us have ever thought about this, but we knew it had to be something that was owned by the people or the employees, or we didn't want a Hy-Vee, but we also wanted to make sure it wasn't one person with all the money sitting in a boardroom making decisions that we, the community, know are better. And so we started down that road, and we determined, it's time to do it. And we've been going through the food FCI, the Food Cooperative Initiative out of the University of Wisconsin. And they kind of have a path that's set forth for us, and that's the best way to put it. They have some, if you do this, you go to step 2, you go to step 3, and as you go along, at the end, you should be a successful food grocery store cooperative. And so we started down the path, and the first path was you need to have 100 members, and then you can form your board of directors and start looking for more members. And we thought, okay, not a problem. A year from now, we'll get started. Within the month, we had already met 100 members. So really, we went, whoa, okay. And that was in 2001, June of 2001. And we've just been growing since and trying to follow that path down the road to see, hopefully get doors open. But we had that excitement, and we still have excitement. But of course, now we've kind of, instead of sprinting, we've kind of went to a walk instead of sprinting down that path. So
that's amazing. And it's a lot easier to get behind a project when you have the community support and you have people who are telling you this is a need, this is a want, but even more, it's an economic need for our community to have, sustainable local food that we can own ourselves and be a part of that chain. So can you just both describe who you are and kind of how you got involved?
Okay, I'm Wayne Sorn, and I'm a farmer from Lake Preston. I've been farming here for about 43 years. In fact, this is my grandpa's farm that I'm farming, so it's been my vocation anyway. And I belong to, I don't know, I think about 7 cooperatives, have for 40 years, most of them. And my son got involved with the grocery store thing, and he's telling me about it. And of course, he's looking for memberships. And so I thought, well, I'll be a member. And so I became a member. And I'm a big cooperative guy. I believe in the cooperative model. I think it's sustainable. It's good for the community. It's good for the people that use it. And so then when they got to their 100 members so that they could have an initial board, I kind of thought to myself, I've been part of a cooperative for many, many years, different types, supply cooperatives, grain cooperatives, credit unions, but I've never formed a co-op. And so I thought, it might be kind of cool to be able to be part of establishing a brand new co-op. And as I got on the board, I was probably the oldest guy on that whole board. And there was a kind of a learning curve for me because they were doing all this stuff online and on the internet, and I was still writing stuff on paper and stuff. So it's been a little bit of a learning curve on that end, but I think I brought a lot to the board as a co-op person, and letting them know, we need to have some education. And I think that was part of it, for me anyway, is that I think people like the idea of a co-op, but they don't really understand it. And so that's kind of the perspective that I've tried to bring to the board is how a cooperative should function and why it should function the way it does.
And so you guys have actually followed a specific model for this Dakota Community Co-op. Can you go into detail about that?
I guess I'll field that question. We, like I said, we work with the Food Cooperative Initiative, or FCI. That's probably how you'll hear me reference it quite often. It literally was kind of just a Google search, to be honest with you. We had reached out to the Sioux Falls cooperative down there in Sioux Falls. We also had a couple people that had come to us and they're like, oh yeah, I've got one in New Elm, Minnesota. And oh yeah, I'm part of one in Iowa. And we're like, whoa, that isn't something that a lot of people around here are very used to. I mean, grocery store in Brookings is Hy-Vee, Walmart. If you grew up around here, it's your local grocery store. And that's all people really knew. So when you started hearing people talk about these different food cooperative grocery stores they're part of, it made a lot of us just go, wow, that's, and we're talking cities of 2,000 people. We had people who were from different locations where maybe it was 5,000 or 6,000 people. And we just went, a 6,000 person town has a food cooperative grocery store, and Brookings, who has 24,000, does not. And so we all just kind of, whoa. And so we started reaching out to the Sioux Falls Cooperative, to the Watertown was another one. Fargo is another one we've reached out to. And a lot of them told us that either they were working with or had looked at the FCI model of forming a food cooperative. And so that's really what kind of started us down the road. We Googled it, and all of a sudden we realized, hey, you know what? Their big main tag is they've successfully opened 174 food cooperatives around the nation. And they had, I think at the time we were looking, they had another 300 that they were looking to open in the next 5 to 10 years. And when you start looking at those statistics and that success rate, not, of course, knowing their unsuccessful rate, but knowing the success rate, that's pretty impressive. And so we knew this was kind of the model we wanted to follow to hopefully get us down the road to opening a door versus us just trying to reinvent the wheel and figure out how to open a cooperative grocery store. So we have been kind of walking down that path. At times it's a little difficult to explain to people who want to become members, or why should I be part of this? That, yes, we're looking for you to become a member, but your membership won't start tomorrow. I mean, it starts tomorrow, but the doors won't be open tomorrow. We need to do this and go to point B, and then the point C, and then the point D, and then the doors will open up for us. And so that, kind of gets to be, it's not I'm going to buy a loaf of bread and now I have a loaf of bread. That tangible item isn't there for them. And so it can sometimes be a little difficult, but at the same time, I think with this this generation, the new people coming about, younger people, I think we're seeing a very big, I want it, I want to be part of it, I want to own it, I want to say in what's going to be there so that I can bring local meat or items that I know weren't made, who knows where they were made down the road by my neighbor, or the gentleman in Sisseton, South Dakota butchered our meat that we're eating, kind of more of that model of things. And so we have a lot of people that are very cooperative. They understand cooperatives, or they understand the concept of cooperatives, I should put. But I also think we have a lot of members that join because of that. I want my food local, or I want to know where my food's coming from, and here's a way for me to be part of something to make sure that happens, because the Hy-Vees, the Walmarts, the Targets, the Aldis aren't helping us that way, or the way we want them to help us.
And exactly.
And I think Jason has hit on a point there that I do believe the younger generation does want to know where their food comes from, and they want something that's sustainable, that will keep the communities alive, and not just the Brookings, but the Lake Prestons and the Arlingtons and the D. Smiths. We want them towns around, because that's the way we grew up. But to do that, we need to support the local farmers and the ranchers doing their thing, and knowing that the product at the end came from somebody that they know, or they can actually look at, or know who it is, and it's not JBS or Smithfield. Who knows who that is? We know the company, but we don't know who they are. And I think that's a big thing with especially the younger generation. They really want to know where this food came from and who's doing the work. And that's one of the principles that we're using in this co-op, is that we'd like to have as much local, regional type food items as we possibly can.
And it's just great, because I was fortunate enough to be at your annual meeting this year, and the transparency that you share with your members and your board and the community it really is outstanding, because Aldi's not doing that, Hy-Vee's not doing that. They're not saying, hey, this is from down the street, that guy you've known half your life. So it's really an investment for the community, and to bring, when COVID happened, a lot of people actually, consumer-wise, started questioning, where am I going to get my food source from? What's safe? And how can we kind of become more sustainable in our own area? So can you speak upon about, maybe some members who are happy with the development? I know it's still an investment mode, right? So you have to tell people, we're working on it, we're developing it, but it's a big community process, and you're involving the actual consumers because they can be owners of it, which is really cool.
And I think that's part of it. And you hit a point also. The COVID really slowed everything down. I mean, it really, really did. But in the same sense, I think, as you stated, COVID made people realize, hey, once in a while the shelves are empty, and I can't get bread, or I can't get milk, or I can't. Where does all this stuff come from? Nobody really seemed to know, but all we knew was that we couldn't get any because the shelves were empty. And so I think, it slowed our process down, because it was so hard to get out and actually talk to people. And so, in all reality, you should take those 2 years out of there, because they don't count, but they're still there. But I think it was a good thing that happened, so that people could kind of start to realize that the chain of our food is very fragile, and it doesn't take a whole lot to make it hiccup. And when it hiccups, all of a sudden you don't have any food. And this country is not used to not having food. You're not used to going into the grocery store and there is no bread to be had, or there's no milk to be had, or there's no cheese to be had. That just doesn't happen in the United States. It did during COVID, and that's a big issue. And I know from the farmer point of view here, during COVID, we had butcher shops around, and I butcher quite a few cattle, and you couldn't get into them. You had to book them a year in advance just to get into them, because everybody wanted the local meat and they wanted to know where it came from. And I think that was a real boost. Now, all that's kind of subsided a little bit. And so now we have to make another big push to get people to understand that's still important, and that a hiccup can still happen. We don't know what it is, but it could happen. And if it does happen, if we don't have a local grocery store that's got local products in it, that we can keep that supply chain that's only 20 miles away or 50 miles away versus thousands of miles away, it's very, very important.
I agree. I think COVID was a big eye opener, but I think it was a big eye opener to certain generations, because this, if you know history, this isn't the first time the United States has went without food. You know, now there was food; it just depended on when you got your food. But I never grew up with that. I never knew having to stand in line to go get my flour. I've heard stories from people who have said, you know, hey, flour was on Tuesday and you took your card and you got your pound of flour. But, you know, I'm 40. People younger than me, we've never experienced that. And COVID really made you open your eyes and go, whoa, it is possible that I might go weeks without bread because there is no supply for it. You know, but before that, I think there was a push by certain groups and companies. My first exposure of it was Five Guys, you know, the restaurant. Walked in and right there on the wall, your French fries today are brought to you by Johnson Farms in Idaho Falls, Idaho. And you're like, I don't know who Johnson Farms is, but that's cool. I know where my potatoes are coming from. You know, it's not just some, you know, big, huge potato farmer who's making the French fries today. It was coming from Johnson Farms. Now, obviously, we don't know how big Johnson Farms is. They could be a huge farm. We don't know, but just that specialized that these potatoes today are coming from this farm. But you see it all over. I mean, in Sioux Falls, you even see it. There are restaurants that are now, you know, our honey roasted ham with our locally sourced honey, you know, from Hartford, or, you know, and not that people are jumping on that, but they're starting to see, oh, you know, oh, Hartford. I know people from Hartford, South Dakota. Maybe I'll get that, you know. Here in Brookings, I know our local Sanderson Farms that does a lot of vegetables and fruits during the summer. They partnered with the local brewery to make and gave them all their strawberries for a, I believe it was a strawberry ale of some sort. I don't remember exactly what it was called, but right there on the sign, Sanderson Farms local fresh strawberries made this beer. And, you know, so people, well, that's exciting. I know Sanderson Farms. I drive by it. I've seen it. I've been there, you know. So I think we see a whole nother group of people, and especially a younger generation, that is very much wanting that, knowing that I might not know anybody in Aberdeen, South Dakota, but I know Aberdeen, South Dakota, and that's cool that I'm getting this food product from this farm or company in Aberdeen. But not only that, you know, you're starting to see a lot of more, even in grocery stores and gas stations. I have a friend that does gas stations, you know, the candies and the pops and those things. And right now, the big, huge push around South Dakota, North Dakota is locally sourced items, snacks. He brought in some ice cream that is made and processed in Fargo, North Dakota. And that is a huge push, I guess, for gas stations. Around here, I have no idea. You know, I have not seen it in my gas station, but you know, it's a huge push because people then can pick it up. I like ice cream, Fargo, North Dakota. I know where that is. They trust it. They want to support it. You know, I don't know the reasoning behind it, but there's something that is drawing that their way, and you're starting to see it a lot more. And that older generation is also starting to feel more, you know, I grew up in the community. I want to give back to the community. Here's how I can do it by supporting this group or supporting that. We're seeing that even in our cooperative. You know, we have members that aren't in Brookings. They're not in South Dakota. In fact, 2 of them are about 1,000 miles from Brookings, South Dakota. But when they sent in their membership, they literally put on there, grew up in Brookings. I think this is great for Brookings. And so they became members. And, that's what we're looking for. People who understand that this is not only good for Brookings, but good for the surrounding communities, good for just good for everybody, to be honest with you. So, and we're hopeful, at least I am, I can't speak for my board or any of the members, but I'm hopeful that, we get this up off of the ground, and all of a sudden Madison says, hey, we should do that. And, Lennox says, hey, we could do that. And all of a sudden now we do have more of these kind of things, whether they are a cooperative or a loosely based cooperative based grocery store. But, there are so many things that as South Dakotans and Midwesterns, we don't really think about, I guess is probably the best way. Myself, I am a member of a book cooperative. They print and source out their own books. They're out of New Hampshire. I don't live in New Hampshire, but I'm part of it because I saw that. I love books, and I just went, hey, this is a great fit for me. And I'm a member of that cooperative in New Hampshire there. And so I think you're starting to see more and more of that, where people just don't understand, or maybe don't realize that something we need can easily be done by the people in the community. And it doesn't need to be owned by one person, or let's call up Moneybags. They always have great money to give to the project. It can take $5 from everybody in the community, and now you've got something going on. Newspapers, grocery stores, especially in these smaller communities, beauty salons, housing, everything. Most people are familiar with electrical and of course the grain elevators and that kind of thing. But of course, a community is usually built around that, and there's a reason they built around a cooperative. So, but to get the people to understand that this is how you can be part of the community and be part of the community. So I think it's a great move, and I'm hoping more people will either help us, join us, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, or, start their own cooperative, whatever it would be, and in their communities.
And so
I think that goes back to the cooperative model. When we have a problem, probably more than one person has that problem. And if we join our arms together, we can generally fix that problem. An example is right here in our community. We lost 2 local newspapers. Probably doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but it meant a lot to us in our little group. And we tried to form a cooperative newspaper. Well, we didn't end up doing it that way, but it started that way. And why? Because everybody wanted a local newspaper, and we wanted to keep it. And that was the problem. And so all you got to do is define the problem. And if there's more than one person that has that problem, you can probably form a cooperative.
It's community building.
Yep.
It's such an important thing, and information sharing. I think that's where a lot of our consumers and me personally is going. Like, I want to make sure that what my money is going back into my community. I live right down the road from Smithfields, and that affects our daily life. Every Sunday there's a certain smell. Every week we don't open the doors as much as we can. As consumers, we have to start thinking, okay, how am I a part of this chain? How do I interact with what's around me, and how can I have some sort of say? And I think that's where your co-op model is so great. So what can you walk me through the process of becoming a member with the Dakota Community Co-op? I know right now, you can't enter this store yet because it's not, fundraising is still happening, but just, kind of your vision throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go. I was just going to say, our next step, once we get to 300 people as members, then we can start the selection process, doing the evaluation of where would be the best suited for our grocery store to be situated within Brookings. And then we can start figuring out where that is, the demographics of who we want, or the people what they want in the grocery store. So we got about 75 people. If we can get that many people on board, we can start making that next step, in which then people will start to see things, because then we can start putting those kind of the demographics out, and maybe we get a couple of different sites in town, and then we can start asking members, okay, we got site A and site B, which one do you guys like? You know, which one would you prefer? And that's, then you start getting the community involvement, then you start getting the membership to buy in even more than just their membership. And I think that's the important part of this whole thing, is to make sure that everybody is buying into this thing, because if you're an owner and you don't use it, you'll lose it.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, it's really simple too. I mean, beyond that, right now, our membership is $150 for the life. You know, I say that to people and they go, well, yeah, next year you'll need another 150, right? And I'm like, no, 150, you are a member and you will be a member until doors open. Right now, we just set that 150, and in the next 10 years, knock on wood, let's hope it's not that long, but in the next 10 years, if there are no doors, you aren't paying more and more and more and more. You're just paying the 150. Now, you know, in our bylaws, we do have, there will be a little bit of a fee, I guess, per year once the doors open, but we aren't talking, most of it's probably going to be the shopping. You'll need to spend so much in the store to stay a member. A member in good standing. And so, you know, right now it's really simple. You go to our website, you hit the button, you pay the 150, and you're a member. And you get all the transparency you were speaking of. You know, we don't, once you're a member, we're not going to say, no, you can never see the financials, and nope, you don't get to know what's going on with us. You know, this isn't a stock or you know, in a sense it's a stock, but not in that traditional sense of, yay, I own a stock of Amazon, woo. I you know, we give out the reports. Right now we have a great marketing team that sets up a monthly newsletter that kind of goes out to all our members to let them know what is going on, what are we looking for. You know, our Facebook and our website and our Instagram and all of them, we're always posting stuff. What's going on? What do we got doing? Here's what we're thinking about. And so that always, you know what I mean? That we open that transparency, because this isn't Jason or Wayne's company. This is our group and this is our idea. And so we want to just be as open to our members as we can, so that we aren't hiding anything. Here in Brookings, there's a little bit more reason why we're a little transparent. This has been tasked before, about back in the early, I believe it was late 90s, it was tasked to open a grocery store cooperative, and it did not work. And so there's still a lot of people who are a little bit suspicious of what's going on. And so that's one of the other reasons we're so open with everything, because we don't want it to be that way. We want you to be part of it. We want you to know what is going on, where we stand, what we need to do, so that people don't ever feel like we're trying to hide something or do something behind the backs of others, or, you know, whatever the case is. But it also, you know, to your point, brings back to a community. I mean, now you feel like you're part of this community thing that we are trying to build in the community, you know, and that tends to help people attach themselves back to the community and what's going on. Plus, I think it's really cool to tell people, I'm owner of this thing that's going on. Are you an owner yet? And you know, with my nose up in the air and high fluting with my you know, my monocle and my top hat, but you know, it's just kind of fun to say that too. You know, very few people here in our community, a lot of places, can say I'm owner of Walmart, because they're not. I mean, you know, they might have stocks in Walmart, but they're not the owners. Whereas this is, You get to vote. You get to put who's on the board of directors. You can run and be on the board of directors. You get to show up at an annual meeting and say, hey, I think we should do this. Can I get a vote for it? I'd like to see anybody try that with Amazon or Apple or Walmart, or, I'm sure I know what will happen. They'll laugh you right out the door with security right behind you. So,
Right.
this is that's the way I especially want this to be is this is our community. This is our event, and this is our thing that we are putting together, and we want to make it happen. So,
And
But
you're
even,
heavily,
even with that, even with all the transparency that we've been trying to do, it is somewhat amazing. We've had a little turnover on our board, and we get new board members on, and they go, God, I didn't realize there was so much work. And yeah, we're doing a lot of work. It's just that a lot of that work is not really, I mean, it's not building, it's not putting any bricks on the walls or windows or doors or anything, but we're doing a lot of foundation work so that this thing will get up and fly. And when it does, then you got everybody on board. And but we still need people to understand that we need their help all the time. If everybody would just get one person that they know to be a member, we'd be almost ready to open up our doors.
and so how, that plays such a policy and procedure, setting yourself
Yes.
up for success. It's a lot of behind the scenes work. It's a lot of committee work. It's a lot of trial and error. And I have seen your dedication, luckily, because I was fortunate enough to go to the annual meeting, but what you've built is so strong and so open that communication with the community of Brookings or whoever is an owner, you guys are pivoting and you're acknowledging people's concerns and you're answering people's questions, and it's amazing. And so how has, like, I've seen you also do community events. You work with other local breweries or maybe people who are connected to specialty producers. You are still supporting that, and you're not a brick and mortar yet, and when you were talking, I was like, that's going to be the easiest step for it seems like. Okay, we have the funds ready, we're going to start building, and then you're a member, you come and shop, and I've even, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought at your annual meeting, if the store keeps going on the pathway and the plan that you guys have marked out, members might even get a kickback from all of the other community members shopping. And if somebody's not an owner, you share that with them and say, hey, if you become an owner of the store, not only can you be on the board, can you make decisions, can you talk about locally sourced food, but you might even get, a certain amount off your groceries. You might make this cheaper
that's
for
part of
everybody
the
else.
cooperative. That's part of the cooperative model, and there's 7 principles to a cooperative model, and one of them is if you make a profit, you share it with the owners. And who are the owners? Oh, that'd be us. And so hopefully we can turn a profit. It doesn't have to be a huge profit. It doesn't have to be 9% or 12%. It could be only 3 or 4%. But if we make money, you get some money back. Now try to go to Hy-Vee or Walmart and say, let's see, are you making 10 cents on that? I'd like to have 3 of that back. It's just not going to happen. And so that's where the cooperative model really shines, is it's your company. And if we make money, so do you.
Exactly. Yeah. And and to be honest, when we first started setting up, FCI did they do a very good job of walking you through the first, what do I want to call it, the first initial maybe thoughts that you would have setting up bylaws. And with any kind of group or organization, especially a cooperative, you have written bylaws that you follow. And as a person who is the writer of the of that, I can tell you it's not an easy task. But one of the items that they ask you right away is there are 2 ways to take this path. A member owned and used, meaning kind of like your Sam's or your Costco, where I'm a member, I get to use it, nobody else does, or an open to all. And that's kind of, we had that discussion, and that's really much what we went to was, we would like to do a kickback, and I don't want to, I apologize, it's not a kickback,
Yeah,
it's a dividend. It's a dividend. As an owner, I will get money hopefully back from the sales and the profits of my cooperative, but I don't care who comes to shop, because those who come to shop and aren't members is so much better for me than it is for them. But we also had talked about, maybe we do want to do what is the big one now? I think Hy-Vee's got it where if you buy their yearly pass, instead of sugar being at $1, you as the member get it for 75 cents. And so we've kind of, of course, these are all huge concepts up in the air because we don't have a brick and mortar yet, but that's also another thought we had was, maybe being a member, that is part of the benefit of that is you'll come in and that person who isn't a member will have to buy their sugar at regular price, and you'll get your sugar at, a member cost or a member price, which then hopefully maybe will kind of like Costco and Sam's draw you to them because, oh, I can get those prices and it's this much. And if I spend this much, it'll pay for itself in a year, and that really is kind of a thought most consumers do have, whereas right now it is hard to sell that because I pay this much and I get, oh no, I don't get to spend that much back. But that is one of the, especially in your electrical cooperatives and your elevator cooperatives, which a group of us, when we were starting this, that's what we all grew up on with, me, myself, my father would take his corn to town and he would get his gas and his fertilizer, from the cooperative. And at the end of the year, they made money. A dividend went back to all the people who use the cooperative and are part of the cooperative. And so that really kind of stuck out with a lot of us, is that's really what we wanted also. Not only does it sell your sense of community, but now, hey, I'm an owner and I get a little bit back in the backside, hopefully, along with the other projects the cooperative will hopefully be doing, sponsoring and being part of this and holding events and stuff like that. That's just something that makes y'all feel good when it happens. So,
and switching gears here, you mentioned, the other cooperative. How are producers kind of thought into the mix of sourcing local products? Are you already in talks of what that vision is looking like? How can producers connect with you in that way?
Well, we've talked a little bit about it, but here again, no brick and mortar. So it's kind of a 30,000 foot level, but also one of the cooperative principles is that you use other cooperatives. And so if some producers have, and I think your group has a few of them that have kind of joined together and are trying to bundle, if you want to put it that way, bundle their products so that others can use it. Well, as a cooperative, we would want to work with a cooperative like that has products that are local or regional and could be put into there. So not only are we helping ourselves and the consumers in Brookings County or Brookings, we're also helping the producers that are actually part of the other cooperative. And so it's a trickle down thing. We spend money in Brookings, but it also goes back to our members, but it also goes back to the producers of the vegetables or the beef or the lamb or whatever it is. And so that not only helps Brookings, but it also helps all those other smaller communities where those producers are from. So it's a big deal if you follow the cooperative model and you use other cooperatives to keep your cooperative going. It just a trickle down and everybody wins.
Yeah, and like we mentioned earlier, if you put a sign up that says this is from certain farm, Johnson Farm, people are gonna actually, read it. I mean, as a graphic designer, I say people don't read, no matter how big you make the sign, how colorful. But I think when you enter a co-op, it's a whole different shopping experience. You slow down, You're not going to just your regular stuff. You're seeing, okay, even the quality of these items might be fresher and better for my family. And with how inflation is going, it's kind of like, okay, I need to get as many benefits back on my money that I can while feeding my family. And so I love the idea of promoting local producers, sharing their process, and then that person, again, you walk into a store, you see the farmer, in our local co-op here in Sioux Falls, they have the farmer above like the produce or whatever it is. They have value-added products. They've got honey, salsa, all sorts of stuff that are locally made here in town, and that money goes back to the producers, and all you do is shop. So nothing really changes for the consumer, but you do get educated on, oh wow, this is really going on around me, And so if you're not from a farming family, if you're not in the sector of ag, I think it starts getting in people's mind and educating them on how important and sustainable local food can be for a community.
And
I think that's one of the other issues that we have is the ag community is getting smaller and smaller all the time. It used to be, back when I was a kid, everybody knew a grandpa, an uncle, somebody that was on the land. And anymore, you've got a whole swath of people that have no connection whatsoever to the land. And so when some of these groups come out and make these wild claims that farmers and ranchers are doing this and that, and they're just destroying things, they have no one to call and ask, are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And that's what is tasked to people like me as farmers, is how do we outreach to the consumer that has no other option other than to listen to this group, and they don't know if it's right or wrong or different, but they don't have any other voice to hear. And when you go to a cooperative store that's being used by farmers and ranchers that are putting the produce in there, now you got somebody to ask. And, they could put my nice little face up there above the beef, and they say, well, I'm going to ask that guy, why did he do this, or why should he do that, or can you do this? And that's the process of getting the consumers to understand where their food comes from, and making it, letting them understand how important it is to be able to know where your food comes from. And an example that I always use is bananas. You go into the grocery store and you buy a thing of bananas, and you get it home, you do it on a Monday. By Friday, you're making banana bread because the bananas are so bad you can't even eat them anymore. Well, the reason is they're picking those bananas before they're ripe, because it takes so long to ship them from wherever up to here. Well, where did that beef come from? Did it come from New Jersey and sit in a warehouse for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever before it got to the grocery store where you're buying it from? Where if you buy it from me, it went to the locker processed it, and it went to you a couple of weeks, and it's all done, and it's in your mouth, and you're swallowing it down. And so now you know where it came from. You know how fast it got there. It hasn't sat somewhere for a month and a half, and now it's good produce that will last for a while anyway, or at least I think it does.
And those dollars stay in your community. They stay in our
absolutely
economic shift. And so I think that's really important, especially for smaller rural areas. Brookings, you're kind of out there. Like Sioux Falls, we have a lot of different things around us, but Brookings, you guys are limited. And so there are so many other communities that you serve. So you're really, you're helping those producers find another food chain export. And that's so important.
And I think it puts puts a face to them also.
Mm-hmm.
You and I, we all go to the grocery store and, oh, bananas, or beef, and let's see, it's JBS is who gave me my beef today, or that's who processed it, and that's the end of it. Versus I see that picture of that person or the farm or whatever, and hey, that's my neighbor, And my neighbor gave money to the school so that the football team could go to the playoffs, and their daughters are part of the Girl Scouts that did that thing for the nursing home, and now all of a sudden you realize that farmers sometimes get a bad rap for being the rich people that they are. Even though I would say anybody in South Dakota can probably tell you that that's not the truth. We all might know a rich farmer, but not only are they the same as your Walmarts and those, your Targets and the big corporations who give scholarships and da 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 da, and I don't mean to rag on the Walmarts and that, because they do great community stuff, but it's all just kind of a checklist, if you will. We give $250 for the Brookings scholarship thing. We give, but so does Sioux Falls, so does Madison. So, all these communities get this, versus these farmers, these people who make products that are local. They're giving money to scholarships. They're giving money to do this. We need to do a burger feed for somebody who has cancer. And who donated the beef? It was one of the farmers, because they know by doing that. And not only did they donate the beef, then they showed up to the feed and gave a donation on top. And so that isn't something that farmers, any of us, do to look at me. But all of a sudden you start to think back on, they did this, they did that, they did this. I think I could give a couple of dollars to get my ground beef from you instead of going over here to get my ground beef.
It's that building trust. It's,
yes.
You see how many recalls Tyson has. You see how many E. coli, Listeria outbreaks. And so consumers are scared. And so when you say, this person literally 4 miles from me is dedicated, educated in these fields, and is producing much better quality food, and I have an opportunity to bring that into my home and make sure my family is safe, that is such a huge relief. And then, the personal aspect of these people are working their lives towards building this resource for the community. Why wouldn't we want to support that? And so, again, it goes back to education and transparency and supporting stuff that stays in our local economy.
Exactly.
I love this conversation. And so talking to you guys, I always just get so excited, and I know I've talked about it, but your annual meeting, I've never experienced anything like that. It was so transparent. You even said the amount of dollars you have in your bank account. You shared that with the community. You shared your timeline and your plans of, okay, once we get to 300 members, then we're on our next point. And you guys are so close,
Yes, very close.
Amazing. You have so much community support, and behind the scenes, it is a lot of work. It is constant educating and constant phone calls, community check-ins, building that relationship. But not only are you doing, it's not self-serving, it's community serving, and it's community building. So I can't believe we've already flown through most of our hour here, but everything you said is just so intriguing. But I want to just touch upon, your future plans, if there's any events coming up, ways that, maybe our producers could get involved, maybe, membership. The South Dakota Specialty Producers, we also have memberships, and those memberships allow us to grow and to further our plans to help support producers in South Dakota. So, how can we support that for you?
Well, I think in the future, especially producers is probably going to be a big part of our cooperative when we open the doors. I think that's who we're probably going to reach out to and ask, what can you provide for us? What can you give us to put in our grocery store? So I think right now it's not a big ask because we have no place to put it, but I think in the future we will have a big ask here, and I think you guys will probably be a big part of that, because we'll need to fill our store. As far as future events, we do have a couple coming up. We're talking about, we just finished one, a beer with the board. We stole that from somebody else, by the way. That wasn't our original idea. So, but we had a beer with the board, and we're hoping to maybe do that a little bit more. And it was just basically come in. We got a couple of board members there. If you're a member of this cooperative and you want to know more about it, come up and have a beer with us. And if you're not a beer drinker, have a Coke. Pretty easy peasy there. So it was just a matter of if you had questions and you really didn't want to ask it out in a big public thing like the annual meeting, and you just wanted a little one-on-one like this was a way of doing it. And if you become more comfortable with us and our vision of what's going to happen with this cooperative, then maybe you'll go out and ask that other person to join and say, this is a good thing. You probably ought to have a membership here. And that's all we're asking, is to have all of our members ask one more person, just one more person. And we have 500 members, and we have a grocery store almost ready to open.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, no. I'm not going to add much more on that. I do think that your producers, your group, like Wayne said, will be probably a group we reach out and say, hey, we're opening a store. We need to put stuff in it. The one thing I think we hit on today was local, and of course your local and Wayne's local and my local all could be different. One of the ideas we've had on the board is, very elementary kind of the thoughts we think about, but when we get to producing, when we get to opening, what do we want to see? And a lot of it, we say local, we want local. And when you ask people what is local, somebody goes 50 miles, somebody goes South Dakota, but not only do we want to go local, but regional. We don't want to exclude the Fargo. We don't want to exclude the Minneapolis, because those are neighbors in a sense. But there are people who grow and do stuff in North Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, that maybe aren't done here in South Dakota. And so, you guys, even if you're in Rapid City, doesn't mean that we don't want you in our store. We'll have to figure that out. But so, we're always looking for that. We're looking for people to just become members, people who believe in the cooperative, or maybe they grew up in Brookings and want to see another grocery store in Brookings, or, or they come back for the Jack's sporting events and they need a place to shop while they're there, get their stuff for tailgating. I'd love to hit that group of tailgating people that come in to tailgate. Then we could just have them come to our grocery store. But, we're always looking for that. And so, we are always doing events. We're doing podcasts and speaking in front of groups. And so, the other thing that your guys' group, if there's anybody that, wants to do a Zoom or wants to do a podcast and just talk about what we're doing up here, we'd love to talk with them. Even if it is in Rapid City and we aren't going to get any members, at least we're spreading the word, because their neighbor might, hey, my son's in Brookings, I should talk to him about that. And so, we sometimes focus on just the Brookings area, but, it's so surprising. When Wayne and I were in Washington, D.C., I don't know, I think I was in high school when that happened. Our cab driver had driven through South Dakota multiple times and started rattling. Oh, yeah, I was here and I went to Mitchell and I went to Huron and Washington, D.C., South Dakota, So I think the more we talk to people, the more they go, hey, I know somebody in Brookings. I know somebody in South Dakota. Now, all of a sudden, they're asking questions back to people in this area than are asking us. And so I think it's always important just to kind of reach out to those people, because we all are connected. And somehow it seems like everybody knows somebody from South Dakota, whether they do or not. Or do you know such and such? He lives in Sioux Falls. And we're like, yeah, we know such and such, only 800,000 of us, but we know him, So, but I mean, I'm sure Wayne and I could sit here and tell you stories of multiple times we were in different locations, Orlando or California, ran into somebody. And by God, I mean, number of times we knew somebody in Watertown who, our neighbor works with. You know what I mean? What are the odds that we ran into this person by chance in this location and they knew somebody we know, and so if we're talking cooperatives with them, then they're reaching out to their friend in Watertown and talking to them about things. So we're always looking for events. So if there's people that optimist groups or podcasts or whatever the case is, just come in and talk to a monthly meeting. Let us know. We'll gladly reach out and see what we can do for you and chat with you more, whether it's 45 minutes or 3-4 hours. I'm sure Wayne and I and the rest of my board, I shouldn't just speak for the two of us, but the rest of our board, we'd gladly sit down and have a conversation with you for as long as we need to. So,
well, I'm glad to hear
I'm not
that.
sure about 3 hours. But,
we do a lot of grant work, and what we do is we want to highlight what our producers are doing and share that education. And so, like you said, we have a lot of stuff going on all over the state, and so you might get called up to be on a panel or to speak at a conference or something, because producers want to have more opportunities to get their product out there, and to, with social media, you can share a lot about yourself, and it stays there to build that trust. And I think that's kind of what's happening here, is because people are realizing South Dakota is not just, that big open state of prairie. There's a lot of really talented, knowledgeable people out here doing hard work. And when you think about food systems, we really do need to create more security throughout other states. So to support our South Dakota producers is our goal, and to help them connect is really what we do. So I'm happy to hear that. We'll be in touch in the future for sure. But I want to thank you both for being here today and sharing, the mission of Dakota Community Market and the progress that you've made. So we'll keep updating our producers as your membership grows, because this is something that could really benefit our whole state and regional with your planning. So thank you guys again. We really appreciate it. And if anybody wants to reach out, become a member, you can find their contact information in our description of this video. And you can honestly, Google is great. If you search Dakota Community Market, they come right up. That SEO is working for you. So we just encourage you guys to keep doing what you're doing. It's so amazing to see your community building.
Thank you very much.